What if I told you that Persia never truly vanished, that the empire of kings, poets, conquerors, and philosophers did not collapse into history, but simply changed the name the world used to describe it? For thousands of years, the word Persia echoed across continents. It appeared in Greek legends, Roman records, medieval maps, and the stories of travelers who crossed deserts and mountains searching for the riches of the East. Persia was the land of Cyrus the Great, of Darius, of magnificent palaces and endless trade routes stretching from Egypt to India. But then, almost suddenly, the world stopped saying Persia. Instead, newspapers, governments, and diplomats began using another name, Iran. Why? Why would an oldest civilization on Earth abandon a name recognized for over 2,000 years? Was Persia conquered? Was it erased? Or was something much deeper happening behind the scenes? Today, we are uncovering the hidden story behind one of the most misunderstood transformations in world history. A story filled with empires, invasions, religion, politics, identity, and propaganda. A story that reveals how a single decision changed the way an entire civilization was seen by the rest of the world. Because this is not simply about geography, it is about memory, it is about power, and it is about the struggle between how a nation sees itself and how the world chooses to see it. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling us which forgotten civilization or hidden historical mystery you want to see next. Now, let us travel back thousands of years to a land long before it was called either Persia or Iran. A land of mountains, deserts, and ancient peoples whose legacy would shape the future of the Middle East forever. Before Rome rose to power, before Alexander crossed into Asia, before Islam spread across the region, there existed a vast territory known today as the Iranian Plateau. This enormous region sat between Mesopotamia, Central Asia, and the Indian subcontinent. Whoever controlled it controlled some of the most important trade routes on Earth. Caravans carrying silk, gold, spices, weapons, and ideas crossed these lands for centuries. But the true wealth of this region was not only material, it was cultural. Around the second millennium before Christ, Indo-Iranian tribes began arriving in the region. These were nomadic peoples who spoke ancient Indo-European languages, distant relatives of the languages that would later become Greek, Latin, Persian, and many modern European tongues. Their beliefs, traditions, and language were entirely different from the Arab culture that many people today incorrectly associate with Iran. In fact, ancient Persian words often sounded surprisingly familiar to Europeans. Madar meant mother, Pedar meant father. These linguistic echoes revealed something important. The people of this region possessed an identity deeply rooted in ancient Indo-European civilization. Among these groups, two tribes became especially influential: the Medes and the Persians. The Medes settled in the northwest and quickly established themselves as a dominant regional power. Organized and militarily strong, they built one of the first major kingdoms in the area. The Persians, meanwhile, settled farther south in a region known as Pars or Fars. At first, they were far less important. No one at the time could have predicted that this relatively small group would one day create the largest empire the world had ever seen. Back then, Persia referred only to a specific region, not an entire civilization. The real center of power belonged to the Medes. But history was about to change forever, because among the Persians, a leader emerged whose ambition reached far beyond tribal politics, a man who envisioned unity instead of division, a ruler who would transform not only his homeland, but the entire ancient world. His name was Cyrus, or as history would remember him, Cyrus the Great. Before Alexander the Great, before Julius Caesar, before Genghis Khan or Napoleon, there was Cyrus. And unlike many conquerors who built their empires through terror alone, Cyrus mastered something far powerful: legitimacy. When Cyrus rebelled against the Medes in the 6th century before Christ, he did not simply overthrow a kingdom, he united multiple peoples under a shared political vision. After defeating the Median ruler, Cyrus founded what became known as the Achaemenid Empire, the first Persian empire in history. But what made this empire extraordinary was not only its size, it was how it ruled. Most ancient empires governed through fear. Conquered populations were enslaved, deported, or stripped of their traditions. Cyrus chose another path. He allowed conquered peoples to keep their religions, customs, and local leaders. Temples destroyed by previous rulers were rebuilt. Exiled populations were allowed to return home. One famous example involved the Jewish people exiled in Babylon. Cyrus permitted them to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple. Because of this, some ancient texts even described him as a divinely chosen liberator. To the Babylonians, he presented himself not as a foreign invader, but as the rightful protector selected by their own gods. It was brilliant political strategy. Instead of forcing unity through destruction, Cyrus cultivated loyalty. And it worked.
Under Cyrus and later rulers such as Darius the Great, the Persian Empire expanded at astonishing speed. It stretched from the Indus Valley in the east to the Mediterranean in the west, from Egypt in the south to Central Asia in the north. Never before had so many cultures, languages, and peoples been united under one administration. The empire became a masterpiece of organization. Royal roads connected distant provinces across thousands of miles. Messengers could carry information faster than any previous empire had imagined possible. Satraps, or provincial governors, managed local territories while still answering to the central authority. Taxes were carefully organized, trade flourished, and unlike many empires that demanded cultural assimilation, Persia often embraced diversity. This was one reason the empire survived for so long. But greatness attracts enemies. To the west, the Greeks viewed Persia with both fear and fascination. Greek writers described Persia's wealth with amazement: golden palaces, massive armies, luxurious clothing, and royal ceremonies unlike anything Europe had seen. At the same time, Greek propaganda painted Persia as decadent, weak, and tyrannical. These conflicting images would shape Western perceptions of Persia for thousands of years. Then came the wars. The Greco-Persian conflicts became legendary. Battles such as Marathon, Thermopylae, and Salamis entered historical mythology. To the Greeks, these wars represented a heroic struggle between freedom and Eastern despotism. But reality was far more complicated. Persia was not a barbaric wasteland. It was one of the most advanced civilizations on Earth. Still, the rivalry between Greece and Persia intensified, and eventually, from the Greek world emerged a young king who dreamed not merely of resisting Persia, but conquering it entirely. His name was Alexander.
In the year 334 before Christ, Alexander crossed into Asia with a relatively small but highly disciplined army. At first, few believed he could defeat the Persians. After all, the Achaemenid Empire controlled enormous resources and vast territories. But Alexander possessed something dangerous: relentless ambition. One by one, Persian armies fell, at Granicus, at Issus, and finally at Gaugamela. The once mighty Persian Empire collapsed before him. Cities surrendered, kings fled, and within a few years, Alexander stood as ruler of the largest empire in the known world. But then, something unexpected happened. Instead of destroying Persia, Alexander became fascinated by it. He adopted Persian clothing, he married Persian noblewomen, he participated in Eastern ceremonies and rituals. He ruled from Persian palaces and retained much of the Persian administrative system. To many Greeks and Macedonians, this felt like betrayal. They had expected Alexander to dominate Persia. Instead, Persia seemed to transform Alexander himself. His soldiers grew uneasy, some even conspired against him. But Alexander understood something crucial. Conquering Persia militarily was not enough. To rule such a massive empire, he needed Persian legitimacy. He needed to become not merely a conqueror, but a successor to the Persian kings. And in many ways he did. Yet Alexander's dream of merging East and West would not last. In 323 before Christ, he died suddenly at only 32 years old. His empire shattered almost immediately. But Persia itself did not disappear. It simply entered another chapter of its long and complicated history. And so, Persia never truly disappeared. It survived invasions, empires, revolutions, and even the loss of its own name. Today, the world calls it Iran, but beneath that modern identity still lives the spirit of an ancient civilization that shaped history itself. Because sometimes a name change is not just about words, it is about power, identity, and the story a nation chooses to tell the world. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and comment below with another hidden historical story you want us to uncover next. See you in the next video.